Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg, and the day has finally come where I'm going to rank all the Zelda games. By which I mean all the mainstream games. I'm not really going to be covering any of the side series, the crossbow training, Four Swords, Hyrule Warriors, Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land, whatever, all that crap. We're just going to be covering the main games in the series, which is, by my count, 16 titles. I'm not counting Triforce Heroes, because I consider that a spin-off, although I did play a bunch of it, and I didn't really care for it because it didn't really seem like a Zelda game at all. Now, I wish I could say so, but unfortunately it is not the case. I have not beaten every single one of these games, unfortunately. I have beaten 13 out of the 16, I think. The three games that I have not beaten are all towards the bottom. And Skyward Sword is the one that I played the least. I did not get very far in that one at all, and that is primarily because of just technical difficulties with a Wii and the Wiimote and just all sorts of crap like that, and just I'm not putting I'm done. So yeah, we're gonna rank them. This is, of course, my personal opinion after playing through the series. I never considered myself really a big Zelda fan. I went into the series here and there throughout the years, but when a new Zelda game came out, it was not like, oh my god, I gotta get it. It was just always like, oh, here's Minish Cap, I'll give it a try, or or whatever. And so I've played them here and there. But over the course of the last 6 years, I made it a focused effort to play through all of them, as many of you listening to this, I'm sure, are aware. And my interest sort of ebbed and flowed over those 6 years. But we're here, and so I'm going to rank them. My opinions may upset some of you diehard Zelda fans, especially for my placement of some of these games, but this is just what I thought as I played through these games, sometimes for the first time, sometimes revisited. Yeah, I guess that's all I need to preface it with. Alright, so first, honorable mention to the Zelda Game & Watch game, which was one of the first ones I played. It was a few months after I beat Zelda 2. I just came across it. I wasn't like looking for it, I don't think. I just came across this online version of the Zelda Game & Watch. And so I was like, oh, I'll make a video about me playing through this. And it ended up being far more difficult than I had imagined. I believe the final boss, or the final level or whatever of the little Game & Watch thing, I think it took like 900 some attempts, if I remember correctly. It was an insane amount of attempts. But I did beat that, so I guess that makes it better than Majora's Mask. So that's the honorable mention. Yeah, not a whole lot to say about it. Very simplistic, but entertaining enough, I guess, for just a little handheld thing. All right, number 16, bottom of the barrel, as far as I'm concerned for Zelda games, is Spirit Tracks. So this is one of the games that I did not finish. Um, primarily due to it just being really, I think tedious is just the number one term to describe this game and a few others of the Zeldas, but this one just put it on a pedestal. Just put tedium on a pedestal. The train aspect, despite seeming slightly more automated than the similar system in Phantom Hourglass, because it was all on a track, ends up just being completely obnoxious due to having to continually, avoid obstacles, shoot things with your cannon, and then they compound on this when you have to carry somebody on your train. And so you have to drive very carefully, and your train has health, and you have to pull into the station properly, and all this crap. And so the whole train thing was just a wash for me. And this, along with Phantom Hourglass, which we'll get to soon enough, the controlled system is just completely unnecessary and piss poor. It's not like, we have had excellent mobile games on Game Boy Color, on the DS, on 3DS. We've had excellent, well, I guess not DS, but anyways, we've had excellent mobile games that just use traditional normal controls for a Zelda game, and they're excellent. Minish Cap was way down the list. Link Between Worlds is way down the list. And you don't need a gimmicky control system or anything like that to make it annoying. So both of the DS games just really suffered because of Nintendo's insistence on just these weird gimmicks. And so I think I finally gave up on the game due to the flute mechanic. That is just not something that I want to devote any amount of time or interest or patience to. Is some sort of little mini game necessary for continuing the main storyline. It's just, no. I was done at that point. When I got stuck on one of the flute things, I was just done. So that's the bottom of the barrel. It only gets better from here. Number 15, as you might have expected, Phantom Hourglass. A lot of the same complaints about this. Phantom Hourglass, for me at least, was slightly better than Spirit Tracks. I think the boat... I thought the tracks would be better, the train would be better than the boat, since it was on rails, but as it turns out, the boat was less obnoxious to me. Wind Waker, which will appear further down the list, is one of the better games, and so sort of continuing the same style, plot, and some of the mechanics of Wind Waker did help this game, but it still suffers from just the ridiculous control systems. And another complaint for Spirit Tracks, but also Phantom Hourglass, was their, I'm going to call, laziness. It just seems like a lack of design creativity or whatever. But both games feature a singular dungeon that you're required to go back to a number of times. I think in Phantom Hourglass it's like 6 or 7 times. You have to continue to go back to this same dungeon and go through the same stuff that you've gone through before. Sometimes there's slight variations, you have new equipment, or you open up a new route, but it's pretty much the same dungeon. You're doing a lot of the same stuff over and over, and it just seems incredibly lazy to me. And so, yeah, both of these games, the DS years were just a wash for good Zelda stuff, I guess. Just did not appeal to me. Number 14, Skyward Sword. So this is a little unfortunate. I thought about not even putting it on the list just because I really did not play it for long. Really, I only got 2 hours into the game or something like that. And it's unfortunate that the first 2 hours are really pretty boring. It seems like it has a extremely slow start. But unfortunately, I can't really comment on most of the game. The reason, I guess, that it ranks so low, and mostly why I don't have an extreme interest in continuing it and working through the technical difficulties, is again the controls. Its controls are actually a really big deal, at least to me. If a game controls simply and well in a traditional manner, I'll put up with a bunch of shit for a good amount of time. But you'll notice my bottom 3 games here all have a unique control system that I think causes each of the games to suffer immensely because of it. Skyward Sword uses the Wiimote and the nunchuck. You have to use those. There's no other options whatsoever. They have never come out with any other alternative. And you have to use the Wiimote to swing your sword and aim things, aim the bow, all sorts of crap like that. And it's just, yeah, Nintendo, that's a great gimmick. I'm glad you're thinking, but it's just unnecessary. Not only is it unnecessary, it hurts your game. And I think if they had just come out Skyward Sword, you can use a Wiimote, you can use a nunchuck, you can do all that if you want. But hey, if you have just a regular controller, you can just play the game and enjoy this all this work that we put into it. But as it stands, with this gimmicky crap, I don't have any interest in experiencing Skyward Sword. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. I did like the graphics. They did look solid as far as the Zelda game is concerned. With the lower resolution and aging, it's going to not look great over the years as it continues to look sort of pixely and just sort of low quality, but I didn't think that was too bad. But a really slow start with bad controls, that's not great for a game. Number 13 is The Legend of Zelda, the original, the OG. So this is of course the first one that I played as far as this 6-year series has gone. I just started playing it on a whim because I had never really played it when I was young. I think we had it. I seem to remember the gold cartridge for NES, but I was very young, so I doubt I really played it at all. And people talk about Legend of Zelda for the NES. They talk about how it was one of the best games ever made and all this kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah for the NES. One of the best NES games, if not the best. And so I gave it a try. I believe I played it when I was sick. So I just recorded all of me playing it. I put in post-commentary for most of it, I think. And I used a walkthrough for almost all of it, which is true for most of the games on this list. But mostly that was just due to me not wanting to put up with some sort of, oh, you forgot this thing, and oh, you forgot this. But it seems for the original Zelda, if you're coming into it, at this point, fresh, it's really, it's really tricky and mysterious. You gotta burn like a specific plant in order to find some stairs, and you gotta just go to these specific spots and do specific things to do things, and it seems very sort of esoteric, but the controls are good. The combat is very simplistic. This is aside from the Game & Watch, is about as bare bones as it gets, but the controls work. And it's not really that, it's not boring to do combat or anything like that. The boss battles are really pretty easy, but it all feels good. You can see why this series became what it was, and why a lot of, pretty much almost every game made by Nintendo, when they're not doing gimmicks, have just great controls and a great feel to it. And the original Zelda is certainly no exception. So it's not a game that I'm going to go replay or anything like that. I would just go play some other better Zelda game. But for what it certainly was a good foundation to the series, and I didn't hate it. So, but there are a lot of better games down the list. So number 13 is The Legend of Zelda. Number 12 is Majora's Mask. So this is the last game on the list that I did not beat, and I didn't beat this game just because it pissed me off. I think my primary complaint with Majora's Mask, which for a lot of people was like a positive, I just really did not care for the whole cyclical nature of the game. Sort of the resetting thing where you go back to the dawn of the first day or whatever it is, dawn of the third day, I don't know, whatever. The earliest point, and you redo things, and then you run out of time, so you go back and you redo things again. Redoing things in general is just not... And I know this each cycle is different, but I do remember redoing things. Especially if you're not following a walkthrough closely and you're just bumbling through. That just really, ugh. And I know a lot of people do care about this. They like that, and Majora's Mask is a lot of people's favorite in the series. It got a re-release and all that. But for me, that just really put me off. But it is higher than some games in this series because I did like the atmosphere and the setting. It is one of the darker, if not the darkest, of the Zelda games. There is some creepy stuff in there. You got this giant scary ass moon. You got these masks that like take over, your face, and you become a whole different thing. And there's some creepy people in there. And I'm surprised they actually released this game, but there's some creepy stuff in there. And again, the controls, they knew what they were doing. At this point, this is after Ocarina, and they worked off that same foundation, and so the controls is pretty damn solid. And so you have all these different masks that give you new abilities and things like that. It was a gimmick, sort of. As a lot of Zelda games have gimmicks, but it was a solid gimmick, and they didn't go overboard with it. They didn't go just batshit with their gimmicks. So there may come a point sometime in my life where I want to go through and actually beat Majora's Mask. But, compared to Ocarina, which I definitely treat a little bit favorably, and back when I was younger, I beat Ocarina. I beat it. When I was a young man, a young boy, a lad, you might say, I beat Ocarina on my own. And I'm pretty sure even when I was younger, I never beat Majora's Mask. I don't know if it's just more convoluted or the cyclical thing just put me off. Whatever. The same thing happened, though. I didn't beat it again. And so for that reason, I got to put Majora's Mask a little bit lower. It gets the shorter end of the stick, I guess. Number 11 is Twilight Princess. So I believe if you play Twilight Princess on the Wii, you can do a similar control scheme to Skyward Sword. I think you can play with the Wiimote. Or was it... Yeah, I think... I don't know. I didn't do that. Because it also came out on the GameCube, but I think they also had a re-release on Wii U. Yeah, HD. That's the version I played. And I got to play with the gamepad. I'm pretty sure if I was forced to play with the Wiimote, I probably also would have really hated it. But since I got just normal, solid controls, except I think there was some sort of gyroscopic aiming, but I think you could turn that off. So it seemed all good from the control front for the most part. Again, I sort of liked the setting, the atmosphere, this sort of Twilight look to it. I was really actually pretty pumped about being able to turn into a wolf. In fact, it's the only amiibo I own is Wolf Link with Midna riding on top of him. It's the only amiibo I own. It's sitting on my desk. Because turning wolves are badass. I like wolves. And so that seemed really cool. It ended up being really disappointing. I didn't like almost any of the Wolf Link portions. Because it just... I think they kind of squandered the whole thing. But... I like the atmosphere and the setting again. The controls were solid, but I think there were a lot of missed opportunities in that game. It was, this is sort of when they started really focusing on like story elements. And so they just hit you with a lot of dialogue, a lot of cutscenes. Again, it seemed like the primary issue with Skyward Sword. Just stuff that I did not care about. I do not care about a story in my Zelda game. Link to the Past, Breath of the Wild, whatever. There's story, I guess, but I don't. They could remove all text and dialogue from those games, and I would still enjoy them the exact same. That's kind of how I am. So hitting me with all this crap is just not interesting me. But the sort of core gameplay, the sword play and all that was pretty solid. And overall, I enjoyed it slightly more than something like Majora's Mask. But I think the game could have been a lot better and more interesting. So a bit of a missed opportunity overall, but not a terrible game. Number 10, Oracle of Ages. All right, so the Oracle games are pretty interesting. Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. Obviously, Oracle of Ages I consider the lesser of the two. They're both pretty interesting, though, because they were developed by Capcom, along with the Minish Cap, I believe. So that's something that I did not know for a while, but it's impressive because they feel just like normal Zelda games. And I don't think it's really a big secret that I vastly prefer the 2D Zelda games compared to the 3D ones. Probably most of that is just nostalgia and all that, because Link to the Past was my main foray into Zelda, and that's where that is Zelda to me. They've done a lot of 3D stuff, but none of them have really, it's just 2D is where it's at for me overall, I guess. And so Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons very similar. Oracle of Ages I consider the lesser one just because I think the Oracle, the time spanning part was not implemented quite as well as the Seasons portion. I think the overall gameplay was slightly more convoluted than Seasons. At least that's how it felt. There was a lot of nice... the concept of time travel, switching between the two, like sort of Link to the Past, switching between Light World, Dark World, it's very intriguing. You have a lot of opportunities there, but sort of like Twilight Princess, I think there was some fumbling with the execution, but the gameplay... overall, the controls are very good. You have a lot of the pieces of the puzzle of Zelda. They're all there. They're all present, and it's all good. But the convoluted nature of it, depending on the Zelda game, it can be a really big hindrance, or it can just be like, yeah, there's a lot of convoluted stuff, but you don't really have to worry about it if you don't want to. And sometimes it gets fuddled, and so Oracle of Ages, still a pretty solid game, but not something I would probably play without a walkthrough. All right, number 9 is Zelda 2. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. So... this one I really had no knowledge about when I went into it. I think I might have played Zelda the original a little bit when I was young, but I don't think I ever touched Zelda 2. And so Zelda 2 is the sort of odd man out to the series. Because because it is there are side-scrolling elements to it. Most of the gameplay is side-scrolling. There's an overworld. You get like you raise like your level. You get magic point. There's a lot of systems involved in the game that are very different, and that's what they were going for. And I think if this wasn't a Zelda game, it probably would have gotten a bit more respect than it has. I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit. Just due to the core gameplay, the controls, the bouncing down on things with your sword and casting spells. The combat to me felt really engaging. There were some really intense moments like that, and there was a difficulty aspect to the combat that almost no other Zelda game really has ever had, except for like some of final bosses and maybe some of the combat in the first game. But they actually cared about putting some difficult elements into it. And yeah, Death Mountain appears a little bit too early, and it can be a bitch, but overall, it appeals to me in the same way that like Dark Souls appeals to me, where the controls are solid, the combat is engaging and entertaining, and when you beat it, you feel that good sense of accomplishment. That being said, it still suffers from some convoluted nonsense. Where to go, what items you need, what magic you need, where to get some magic, where to get some items, and yeah, there's some of that. And Dark Link at the end of the game is probably a little too tricky unless you do the trick, which of course I did. But there's the other final boss that you get to fight, which is a good fight. So yeah, overall, I'm gonna look back fondly on Zelda 2 as one of the better Zelda games. I mean, I ranked it higher than Majora's Mask, which probably will piss some people off, but yeah, it's about halfway down the list. There are obviously better games that are more enjoyable and feature a more complete game with less convoluted nonsense, but at the same time, the control, like I said, the controls are good, the combat's fun. All right, number 8. Here we go. Ocarina of Time. So like I said, back when I was younger, I played through Ocarina of Time quite a bit. I did beat it. I even had a friend who, for whatever reason, he desperately wanted to see me beat Ocarina of Time. He wanted to see the end. And so I actually did it. I played through the ending for him like twice. I went over to his house. I had like a save towards the end. I beat it, and he's like, "Oh, show me again. Do it again." I'm like, "All right." So I've seen the ending of Ocarina like 4 times, which is, that might be the highest. I don't know. Maybe Link to the Past is higher. I don't exactly know. But anyways, so when I was younger, I certainly enjoyed Ocarina of Time, but I don't think it's aged exactly as well as people think it has. Again, it's ranked as highly as it is because, again, it controls well. Combat is entertaining. There's no sort of weird gimmicks with control schemes or strange mechanics or anything like that. It is, for a 3D action-adventure game, everything with the core gameplay is exactly as it should be, which is why it has been so, widely loved over the years, and people can go back and play it no problem. The issues that I have with Ocarina are, again, dialogue. that this is where it started to bother me, because it involved talking to a lot of people. I'm pretty sure I went from Link to the Past to Ocarina, and I don't remember talking to as many people in Link to the Past. In general, overall, I do not like dialogue in video games, which might be why the Soulsborne series is one of my favorite, because you can avoid almost all that. And Ocarina, for me personally, I always cite a single example. There are other parts of the game that are convoluted and just sort of esoteric and out of the way and annoying, but the single example I always cite is the hook shot, where you have to go like under the graveyard in the village to race a ghost or whatever in order to get the hook shot to get into the forest temple. And I'm sure if you talk and ask around, you're probably directed to this. But again, I hate dialogue. And so I never talk to anybody. So the odds of me stumbling upon the hook shot without a walkthrough and without talking to anybody are infinitesimal. So that's always the example I cite because it just bothers me so much. I just want to play through the game. And I want the difficulty to come from the combat and from the gameplay, even from solving like a puzzle within a dungeon, okay. But when I have to like figure out broader aspects of where they hid shit, that's where it sort of bothers me. Now, again, that's a positive for a lot of Zelda fans. They love that. They love exploring every nook and cranny and finding everything. And I think it just comes down to me not being... It's just me not being a huge Zelda fan. And I think that's sort of where it bumps up against me, and that's where I start to dislike it. I mean, keep in mind, Ocarina is higher on this list than I guess I thought it would be. Partly because the series has had some pretty big stinkers, I guess. But overall, it's this high because of the good controls and the solid gameplay as far as, you know, moving your character, fighting, and solving puzzles and things like that. I'm sure plenty of people put this as number 1, but for me, it is number 8. Slightly better than Ocarina. Number 7 is Wind Waker. So Wind Waker is a game that I had a bit of experience with. Somewhere around when it came out, I do remember playing through it. I was playing it on the GameCube way back when, and I remember enjoying it, actually. I remember enjoying Wind Waker, and I want to say I got to like the second to last dungeon or something like that. I was fairly far in the game, and I had a friend over who I'm no longer friends with, and I don't even remember exactly what happened. This is a very vague memory, but I know for a fact he was responsible for eliminating my save on Wind Waker. And so I lost all progress, save was completely deleted, and I thought I would just never touch the game ever again. And so finally, with this series I've been doing, I finally got to Wind Waker, played through it again, and yeah. I think as far as the 3D Zelda games are concerned, from a pure sword play perspective, I think Wind Waker has the best sword combat. Like, out of the box. I think with Twilight Princess, you can unlock a lot of moves, and Skyward Sword could have been better, possibly, but with the Wiimote controls, that would never happen. Breath of the Wild gives you a lot more sort of options as far as combat is concerned, but from purely sword play, I think Wind Waker is top of the list. Graphics of Wind Waker are great. You'll get no argument from me for that. It's a graphic style that will certainly last for a good number of years. And especially with the HD version, and I'm sure there'll be another HD version down the line, Super HD. So combat, graphics, excellent. The boat, I guess I like the concept of taking your boat and exploring an ocean and going to all these different islands and seeing what you can find. I like the concept of that, and if they, sort of redid that concept in like 10 years, if they did like Breath of the Wild 2.0, and you had an ocean that you could sail across, and they had a bunch of different islands, but not like tiny little islands. They were decently sized islands, and you just had this whole ocean of stuff that you could check out. That would probably appeal to me quite a bit. Now, Wind Waker, unfortunately, well, the concept appeals to me. The execution, I just wasn't that interested, I guess. Partly this could be due to me Let's Playing it. Keep in mind, doing a Let's Play of a game, for me, will almost always give me a slightly more negative, ranging to extremely more negative reaction than I would normally have just playing through the game on my own. Just because when I'm Let's Playing a game, I have to vocalize everything. And so the easiest thing for me to vocalize is my complaints. And so I tend to nitpick. I tend to look for things to complain about just because that makes commentary easier. And so when you complain about a game over, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever, you're going to tend to have a slightly negative perception of it. So maybe if I had played Wind Waker on my own, very leisurely, and I was just going through and exploring all the islands and doing all that, blah, 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 perhaps the execution would have worked for me. I don't know. It's hard to say. I also think Wind Waker suffered towards the end because you had to... This was improved in the HD version compared to the original, which... God. But you have to acquire all these Triforce charts, and you have to pay a lot of money, and you have to get all the charts, and then you have to find all the Triforce fragments and all this sort of busy work, and that does not appeal to me. Busy work is usually not a good thing. And sure, some people will not consider it busy work, but I digress. So overall, Wind Waker beats out Ocarina just mainly due to the combat system, as well as the graphics. I think the graphics hold up better compared to Ocarina, but the sword combat is what I'll remember most about Wind Waker. It just felt fun to me. Every sword fight was just, oh, this is entertaining. So not quite the best 3D Zelda game, but it's certainly up there. Number 6 is Link Between Worlds. So I believe this is the only one on this list that you guys did not get to see me play. I played this game when it came out on my own. I burned through it, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, as I assumed I would. This is sort of a 2.5D, I guess. Spiritual successor to Link to the Past, with really no weird control gimmicks. I mean, there is a touchscreen, and I think they utilize that for some menu stuff or picking equipment, or I don't really remember. But overall, the gameplay was very traditional, except the main thing that I remember. Well, there are two main things that are a little different about Link Between Worlds. One is you could sort of you could go completely two-dimensional and merge into a wall. So you became like a painting that moved along the wall. And so, this is one of those sort of little gameplay gimmicks that give you some interesting puzzles and interesting situations, and I didn't mind it. It seemed pretty good. The other big difference was items. So you could, instead of the traditional system of you go to this dungeon, you get this item, you use this item in this dungeon. Then you go to this dungeon, you get this item, you use this item in this dungeon. Link Between Worlds lets you sort of like rent items. And so this allowed you to do dungeons in sort of whatever order you wanted to. Because you could just go, you could pick up this item, and then you could say, oh, okay, I need this to do this dungeon, so I'm going to go do that one. And now I feel like doing this one, so I'm going to go and do that one. And, a few of the Zelda games have tooled around with sort of letting you do dungeons in whatever order. Link Between Past gave you some options once in a while. But it was an interesting mechanic. I don't know if they'll ever do it again. But overall, Link Between Worlds, I don't have a whole lot to complain about. I guess aside from the fact that it is a mobile game, which means, especially with sort of these slightly, the 3D polygons and things like that, it just means that over time the graphics are not going to really hold up. And I would prefer an alternative means of playing it, but I guess that's what emulators are for. Yeah, I mean it's a pretty solid game in the series. For me, I'd rather play that again than Wind Waker. So there you have it. Number 5, Oracle of Seasons. I don't really want to repeat much of what I said about Oracle of Ages. They are pretty similar games, but you'll notice Oracle of Seasons jumped up quite a bit over Oracle of Ages. I just feel that the gimmick of the seasons was far more agreeable to me, I guess. It didn't seem like there was as much convoluted crap. And really, just as far as gameplay is concerned, it's just really pure two-dimensional Zelda goodness. There isn't a whole lot to complain about Oracle of Seasons, except perhaps the final boss. If the final boss is who I think it is, let me just check. Yeah, the final boss of Oracle of Seasons was a real pain in the ass. One of the hardest final bosses in any Zelda game. Which isn't that huge of a negative. If a Zelda game is going to have a problem having, difficult combat, a difficult combat encounter, especially for a final boss, is certainly not that terrible. Oracle of Ages. What the hell even was the final boss of Oracle of Ages? Baron? Sorry, I'm just doing all this live. Oh, I remember the Oracle of Ages final boss. That one was not as difficult, I don't think. I don't remember struggling with it as long as Oracle of Seasons. But again, like you're not struggling with the camera or any crap like that. You're not struggling with like aiming your bow with your gyroscope controls or anything like that. It's just pure traditional two-dimensional controls, combat, all that, and it's just solid. Now, of course, when you beat both games, Oracle of Ages and Seasons, you get the true final boss, but that shit was way too difficult for me, so I did not actually do that, but it's the options there. So yeah, Oracle of Seasons, I could certainly see myself playing through it again. Very solid game. One of the best Zelda games. Number 4 is Minish Cap. So again, a lot of the same things. I'm not going to repeat myself. Again, just very, very solid, two-dimensional combat, puzzles, all that. Minish Cap beats out Oracle of Seasons, primarily because of the graphics. The graphics are just really attractive to me. Very colorful, very nice. They get sort of into three-dimensional-esque, but it all looks very colorful, very good. And the gimmick in that game of being able to turn yourself into a tiny little thing and all that, I really enjoyed that. This Minish Cap I've beaten twice now, once on my own and once on video. And I wouldn't be shocked if at some point I beat it a third time. Really not a whole lot to complain about Minish Cap. One of the best. Number 3 is Link's Awakening. Now, specifically, the one that I played on camera and beat was DX, which is the color version. Because why not? I didn't really see a reason to play the original when you could play with nice colors. So, Link's Awakening. The primary reason that this is so high is because you get a jump. Yeah. You get an item that lets you jump. It's called the Rock's Feather. And other game, I think the Oracle games both gave you some sort of jump. I think it might have also been the Rock's Feather. But for Link's Awakening, it was the star. For me, at least. Like, being able to just jump whenever the hell I want, it was just... Something about that appeals to me so much. But other reasons are Link's Awakening. This was coming like straight off of Link to the Past, and I don't know if it was the same team working on it or if they were just using Link to the Past for inspiration or whatever. But all the mechanics in that game were pretty much just on point. Again, it's Nintendo bringing to the table just perfect controls and mechanisms and gameplay, interesting puzzles, interesting boss encounters, just everything coming together into a really enjoyable adventure package. And I'm trying to remember if Link's Awakening, if the trading portion was mandatory or not, because I know there was a trading aspect. I just can't remember. And either way, I mean, I don't remember the trading part being really hugely negative if it was mandatory, so it's not really a big deal. And the other thing was the setting. It's not set in Hyrule. It's on an island. It's a single island. And for some reason, it just is a really enjoyable area. And, it's got a lot of the same features as Hyrule. But it was unique. You had the fish. You had sort of all these sort of musical aspects to the game. And, again, primarily the gameplay is where it matters for me. And Link's Awakening is top 3. All right, number 2. What's it going to be? Drum roll. Number 2 is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So, when I beat Breath of the Wild, I said it was probably my favorite Zelda game. And yet, here it is at number 2. Obviously, I gave more thought about it, and nostalgia probably won out in the end. But Breath of the Wild is arguably far more impressive than Link to the Past. Not only of, just what it is as a game and sort of what it is as an accomplishment for gaming and the potential future of gaming and all that. It's arguably more impressive just for me personally because it turned me around as for a Zelda fan, I guess. To the point of, before Breath of the Wild, I really didn't care too much about the Zelda series. For me, it was like, yeah, you got like Link to the Past and Minish Cap and stuff, and those are good games, but now you got all these shitty Zelda games they're pumping out. It's like, I don't care about this series anymore. And then Breath of the Wild comes out, blows me away, and now I can't wait for the next Zelda game. Like, they could charge me $500 and I'd be like, all right, here's my credit card number. So it really turned me around. I've been shitting on Nintendo as a company for a number of years. And now it's like, well, now I don't know how much negativity I can throw at them. They put out Breath of the Wild. So yeah, very impressive release. And I think Breath of the Wild is fresh enough in everybody's memories. I don't really have to gush about how good it is. But primarily Breath of the Wild makes it near the top of this list because it's really not that much of a Zelda game. You have characters in there, you have aspects, you have, enemies and items and things like that, yes, we can clearly see are Zelda. But I think you could fairly easily reskin this game into just some other generic thing or whatever, and you'd still have a really, really incredible open world third-person adventure game here. And you can just see how much effort was put into that game. With all these sort of little interactions, all these little puzzles, all the Korok seeds, all the shrines, all the physics sort of interactions between things, and it's just really impressive. There aren't that many games that I will sort of somewhat become obsessive over, sort of like completing it. Not to say that I obsessively complete Breath of the Wild, because I did not get every Korok seed or anything like that, but I did go to every shrine, and I finished. I got all the upgrades and all that. I put many, many hours into that game, and when it was over, it was like, shit, I want more. So just an incredible achievement in gaming that really turned me around. It's like, because really I thought they were just sort of milking the series. They were putting out Hyrule Warriors, and they were putting out spin-off games and just sort of milking it and being like, oh yeah, here's another Zelda game with some gimmicks, here you go. But then Breath of the Wild comes out, and Nintendo still has something to them. They are still a company that can throw away gimmicks. They don't give a shit about gimmicks. They can just put out a groundbreaking game once in a while. So that's Breath of the Wild, and that's number 2. But here it is, number 1, the best Zelda game ever made. No arguments from anyone. And I'm sure you guessed it before you even clicked on the video, and that is Link to the Past. Now, like I said, nostalgia probably heavily factors into this decision. Link to the Past, pretty much I don't remember a point in my life where I hadn't played Link to the Past. Because the game came out when I was like 1 or something like that. I must have been... Yeah, I was like 1. Or maybe 2 when we got it. So I do not remember a time of not having Link to the Past. And when I was very young, I would just watch my brother play it obsessively. It's absolutely one of his favorite games. And when I, started to understand how controls worked and got my hands on it, I adored it. And Link to the Past has of course made it to plenty of best of lists over the years, over the last 26 years or whatever, because it just does everything right. The controls are perfect. The graphics are, still to this day, it just looks good. There's not really much to complain about the graphics. It's just, these pixels and all that just look still great. The puzzles were not too obtuse. The dungeons were all varied and interesting. The bosses were very entertaining. There was some difficulty there still, when Nintendo cared about difficulty, but it was all doable, and it's pretty close to perfection as far as a video game is concerned. Gosh, if I had to think of some negatives. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sure somebody could come up with something, but... and again, rose-tinted goggles and all that, but for my money, Link to the Past is pretty easily the best Zelda game. Breath of the Wild certainly gave it some competition, but they're so... I think here's the thing. They're so drastically different. It really is apples and oranges between Link to the Past and Breath of the Wild. These games are released, 20-some years apart, completely different gameplay, graphics, everything is just entirely different. It's really unfair to say this one is just better than the other one. And yeah, if I had made this list right after I beat Breath of the Wild probably would have been number 1. But nostalgia is a very potent force. It's going to win out. And so that's why Link to the Past is my number 1 favorite Zelda game. So there you have it. I played through pretty much all the mainstream Zelda games, pretty much with the goal of seeing if any of them could compare to Link to the Past, as that was my favorite before I did all this, and it's still my favorite after all this. Now, like I said, some of that is due to Let's Plays putting a little bit of a negative spin on all the games, but I did do a Let's Play of Link to the Past, and I still loved it and all that, so who's to say? Overall, I would say I'm very glad to be done with this series. It's tough to say that I'm a Zelda fan. I hesitate to say that I'm a Zelda fan. Yes, I've beaten almost every one in the series, and I will buy, the next one on release day, but I'm really only a Zelda fan because Breath of the Wild came out. Without that, I would just be clinging to Link to the Past and, Link's Awakening and just being like, I like those games, but I'm not a Zelda fan. I am very excited for the future of the series, but at the same time, for the majority of the games that I've mentioned over the last hour, I have no interest in replaying them. So yeah, I guess that's about it. It's crazy to have finished this this almost 7-year-long journey of playing Zelda games. I didn't really think that I would finish, and it's a little disingenuous to say that I finished. since I didn't beat every game. And Skyward Sword, it's unfortunate, really got the short end of the stick, but from what I hear, it's not really a popular game. Even Ziggy, who loves Zelda games, didn't go past like the first dungeon. So I'm probably not missing much. I doubt its rank would shift that much. So we'll leave this list as it is for the rest of time. And now I get to do the same process with the Final Fantasy series. Oh boy. We'll do another one of these lists in about 12 years, I think. But alright, my name is Mangg. This has been my ranking of all the Zelda games. And I'll see you fine folks around.